Hello and welcome to my channel NBSoundHopperUK, and the subject of this video will be my favourite 10 compilation albums. For the purposes of this video, compilation albums means ones by individual artists rather than various artists. That subject will be broached in a later video. So I'm sure we all have them, the best ofs or greatest hits or collections of singles and or EPs or of B-sides and or rarities. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're my favourite type of album, but some are put together really well. Sometimes they can benefit from being compiled chronologically. At other times, the running order can work effectively by making the album flow based on tempo, mood and tone. There is a mix of both types in this list, which is in descending order. 10th is Legend by Bob Marley and the Wailers. Without trying to sound like I'm damning this with faint praise, this is a great album to have on in the background, whether you're just doing stuff at home or at a party or wherever. It's funny how something can sound so familiar without tracks being totally ingrained to the extent where you can anticipate every note and word. All the big hits are here: Three Little Birds, No Woman, No Cry, Jamming, Exodus and more. 14 tracks in total, and it's the sort of album where, even if you're not a huge fan of reggae, I think you'd have to really hate it to not find something appealing on Legend. 9th is Pubic Fruit by Curve. Pubic Fruit contains Curve's first 3 EPs and the lead track off of their 4th, all of which were originally released between March 1991 and February 1992, and the running order on the album is chronological. And that works really well because it illustrates just how quickly the band developed their songwriting skills, acquiring more sophistication along the way. Mixing indie, shoegaze, electronic, industrial, and rhythms leaning towards hip-hop, somehow Curve managed to find a sound distinctly their own. There are plenty of highlights among the 13 tracks: 10 Little Girls, Frozen, Fait Accompli, Clipped, Coast is Clear, Galaxy, to name but 6. As in your face as the music is, Tony Halliday's vocals aren't lost amidst all that's going on around her. If anything, they become a hypnotic focus. How Curve weren't more popular is, to me, one of life's little mysteries. 8th is Some Girls Wander by Mistake by the Sisters of Mercy. When it comes to goth, there are 3 names that immediately spring to my mind: Siouxsie The Banshees, Bauhaus and the Sisters of Mercy. This compilation consists of the Sisters of Mercy's output on singles and EPs between 1980 and 1983. I'm not sure how popular an opinion it would be among die-hard fans of the band, but I don't think any of their subsequent studio albums come close to most of the material that's on Some Girls Wander by Mistake. Although the 3 tracks from their 1980 single, The Damage Done, are easily the weakest, the AA of Alice and Floor Show, The Body Electric, Anaconda, the Reptile House EP, and the Temple of Love is a really strong run of releases with not a duff track in sight, including covers of the Stooges' 1969 and the Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter. Other personal favourites are the aforementioned Alice and Floor Show, Lights, Phantom, Burn, Heartland and Valentine. The only downside to Some Girls Wander by Mistake is that they didn't make it a 2-disc set to include the outstanding Body and Soul EP from 1984. 7th is Rost Pocks, the EP collection by Mouse on Mars. Originally based in Cologne, Germany, the Mouse on Mars approach to electronica in the 90s was quirky and fun in comparison to a lot of their contemporaries. It's perhaps a reason why their standing with electronic music fans, certainly in the UK, is some distance below that of Aphex Twin, Ortega, The Black Dog, Plaid, etc., etc. Notwithstanding that, this compilation of EPs is playful, bright, odd in places, but above all else, a damn fine listen, and not without elements that might appeal to those who aren't too keen on techno. The album opens with Frosh and closes with Frost Room, a 9-minute remix of the former track. Both show how techno can be atmospheric as well as being aimed at the dance floor. Second track, Bib, with its clattering percussion, is superb as is the bouncy twift. It's not all basic 4/4 high tempo though, as one of the strengths of Mouse on Mars is their versatility, as shown on Schlectron, for example. Nor are all the tracks instrumentals. Lasergum and Schnick Snack feature Stereolab vocalist Letitia Sadier, and she's joined by bandmate Mary Hansen on Kashkur Naif. For anyone curious about Mouse on Mars, Rost Pocks is an ideal entry point. Sixth is Singles Going Steady by the Buzzcocks, maybe the finest example of punk pop. You could almost say that there's no need to bother with any of their other albums because this one provides a pretty definitive picture of what Buzzcocks were all about. For the most part, sub 3-minute love songs grounded in the real world. By that, I mean as opposed to the overblown fantasist nonsense in songs like Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart. Ever Fallen in Love, Orgasm Addict, Promises, Love You More, Just Lust, Oh Shit, and What Do I Get are all terrific examples, and there are many more. Yes, it has the bish bash bosh of punk, but this is a band that had an ear for what it takes to write a catchy pop song. Fifth is the Singles by The Clash. I refer to versatility in respect of Mouse on Mars, and it applies equally as much to The Clash. This chronological compilation from White Riot to Should I Stay or Should I Go is a journey through a pretty remarkable progression as well as in time. There's out-and-out punk, e.g. White Riot, Clash City Rockers, English Civil War, and possibly my favourite punk track from its time, Complete Control. There's punk reggae crossover on White Man in Hammersmith Palais, full-on reggae with Bank Robber, 60s pastiche on Hitsville, UK, rap on The Magnificent Seven and This Is Radio Clash, and loads more, including London Calling, the song they are now probably best known for. Even if you don't share the band's worldview, lyrics are well written and more often than not attempt to make a point. Sensibly, the album doesn't go beyond 1982. This Is England from 1985 was a decent single, but from the remains of a fractured band in its death throes. Fourth is Once Upon a Time, the Singles by Siouxsie The Banshees. This covers their singles from their beginnings up to their fourth album. So you've got the punk/noi influenced material up to and including the album Join Hands, the psychedelic tinged singles from Kaleidoscope, and the full-on goth that came with the album Juju. It only contains 10 tracks, but they're all great and here are presented in chronological order. If their record company initially released this album out of fear that the band had run its course, they couldn't have been more wrong, as throughout the 80s they developed their sound further, establishing them more as art rock than punk or goth. Regardless, Once Upon a Time is an excellent snapshot of a band carving out a niche for itself with songs that had commercial appeal, yet retained a fierce independence. In third, it's 16 Different Flavours of Hell by Pop Will Eat Itself. 16 Different Flavours of Hell ranges from 1988 to 1993 when the band were on RCA Records, and it highlights their energetic blend of hip-hop, rock, dance, rap and electro. There are lots of cleverly utilised samples and a large amount of punk attitude too. Despite only 3 of the singles breaking the UK's top 20, Karma Drone, X, Y and Z and Get the Girl and Kill the Baddies, there's loads of brash, catchy, up-tempo tracks included. Bulletproof, Defcon 1, Wise Up Sucker, Can You Dig It, to name but a few. On vinyl, there are indeed 16 tracks. On CD, you're treated to another 3, PWEization, Eat Me, Drink Me, Love Me, Kill Me, and Preaching to the Perverted. It's an excellent collection and an interesting one as an example of how new technology in the late 80s and early 90s was changing the possibilities for how pop songs could be constructed. Second, it's the Best of Hula by Hula. Hard-edged, post-punk, electro-industrial funk, allied with samples, tape loops, and a paranoid vocal delivery. This 15-track best-of compilation is a fantastic sample of Hula's work. There are some absolute belters here. Fever Car, Give Me Money, Walk on Stilts of Shattered Glass, and Blackwall Blue for starters. Then there's the intense physicality of Freeze Out, which just as you start to think it's about to end, it kicks back into frenzied life. The full-on EBM of Poison is another highlight, with a great lute bass sequence and melody, a strict 4/4 of kick drum and snare, surrounded by sporadic metallic percussion, menacing vocals including the great line, "I was the tortured teenager, and now I am the torturer." An alternative perspective on what it means to have grown up. If there's one thing I feel got in the way of Hula gaining more traction between 1983 and 1987, the period in which they released their material, it would be that they were maybe 2 or 3 years early with this kind of sound. If it had been released between 1986 and 1990, then they might well have had a larger audience. And first, it's Starry Eyed and Bollock Naked, a collection of B-sides by Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine. For a long time, there was a quite widely held view that B-sides were simply tracks that weren't good enough to be included on the album the A-side came from. In the late 70s, that view started to change, especially given that more and more non-album singles were being released, meaning there was little value in having a duff B-side. So, fast forward to 1994. Carter's string of several UK top 40 singles led to Starry Eyed and Bollock Naked being released, and it demonstrates that their B-sides weren't throwaway tracks. In fact, they were very strong, almost ridiculously so. In typical fashion for Carter, it's mostly electro-punk rock. Not exclusively though, as there are a few quieter and down-tempo moments too. Whatever the style, the lyrics are brilliant, combining social commentary and satire, employing stunning wordplay. Of the 17 B-side songs, my favourites are Re-Educating Rita, Alternative Alf Garnett, Watching the Big Apple Turn Over, and A Nation of Shoplifters. Final track, Glam Rock Cops, was actually their current A-side at the point this album was released, and it's a rousing conclusion to a real treat of an album. Out of that lot, Legend is probably the only really well-known one. That's not to say it's the only well-known one I have, far from it. I also have some popular compilations by The Doors, Queen and David Bowie amongst others. However, whether it be over familiarity, the track listing or the running order, it's enough to push them down my list of most liked compilations. There are links to a track from each of the albums I've talked about in the video description. Any interaction, whether by liking, disliking, commenting or subscribing, is greatly appreciated. And along with past video recommendations, those options are shown at the end of this video. In the meantime, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching.